So hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe here, and I'm just here at the shrine room at Bhideka Vihari, which is the monastery where I'm staying, and thought to record a short Dhamma discussion for the internet. So I thought that could start with a little bit of meditation, so can lean forward and arch the spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath. Can know when it's coming in, and know when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, can just know, I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, can just know, I'm breathing in a short breath. And can focus in on the breath at the tip of the nose. And if notice any patterns of tension or tightness around the nose, around the face, can just let those relax. And when watching the breath at the tip of the nose, it can be good to try to make mindfulness as continuous as possible. Being aware all the way through the in-breath. As the in-breath turns to the out-breath, all the way through the out-breath, and as the out-breath turns back to the in-breath again. Trying to make mindfulness as continuous as possible. And if the mind wanders off to the past or the future, can just bring it back to the present moment, to the breath. And before we finish meditating, can spread thoughts of goodwill, wishing may all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. May they put in place the causes necessary to be happy and at ease. And we can make the mind infinite. can make it unbounded, all the way to the ends of the universe and beyond, in every dimension. May all beings all around everywhere be happy and at ease. Okay, and can open our eyes and do a short Dhamma discussion for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. So hope that everybody is having a great day wherever it may be. And Steve Linder from the who runs a daily Dhamma study and Pali Canon study group on Facebook sent me a list of questions about VEDANA. Today they're doing, or this week or this period, they're doing a series of teachings on VEDANA. So one of the questions that he asked was, what is Vedana? How does the Buddha define Vedana? Vedana in Pali means feeling. And so usually in the Pali Canon, this is basically just described as feeling tones of either, or just described as pleasant feeling, neutral feeling, or painful feeling. And then often a distinction people make is if, say, one is angry, that there'll be this baseline negative or unpleasant feeling, and the more complicated parts come under another aggregate, which is called sankhara, or compounded things. In meditation circles, though, feeling is often basically looked at as the feeling itself. So if one feels the feeling of anger, then the feeling itself of anger would come under feeling. That would be feeling. And then if one were to look at the feeling of anger in terms of its composite parts, in terms of the thoughts that are feeding it, say somebody sees somebody they don't like, and this thought gives rise to anger about what this person has done in the past, what they might do in the future, then this kind of thinking and the observation of the thinking, as well as the observation of the causes and effects of this thinking, all of this compounded thing, if one focuses in this way, one could look at it as sankharas. So this is another way to view feeling. And one focuses on anger, the feeling of anger, and one can kind of separate that from its causes and conditions, the other things that are feeding it, and just focus on the feeling. In this case, that feeling would come under Vedana. If on the opposite end, one sees somebody that one likes, one gets a good piece of news, then whatever that feeling is, that feeling of happiness, if one focuses on the feeling in and of itself as a satipatthana, then this would come under feeling. Whereas if one were to, say, focus on the whole process, focus on the way that these things come into existence, how they're fabricated, try to look at more of the situation than just the feeling, then this could come under sankharas. So in other words, this is the way that this is often looked at in meditation circles, is the whole feeling. The experience of the feeling is feeling, not just the base of either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So another question Steve asked was, how could one, I guess, just paraphrasing, but focus on Vedana in a way that's unskillful? How could one focus on Vedana, or feelings, in a way that's skillful? And so if somebody, for using the previous example, if somebody sees somebody that they don't like, and thoughts of the past come up as to what this person's done, if one feels this feeling of anger, this can actually provoke more thinking. This thinking can actually provoke more angry feelings. In other words, this feeling, if one isn't aware of whether or not it's skillful or unskillful, if one doesn't work to check it, doesn't work to restrain it, then it's something that can grow. It's something that can have a kind of feedback mechanism where, for example, one would see a person one doesn't like, feelings of anger arise, one isn't mindful of this feeling, then it feeds more thoughts. This is one way it might possibly work, and then it feeds more anger. And this way, one can see kind of anger grow, spiral out of control on the basis of feeling. I can remember times when I was a young monk and maybe somebody did something I didn't like, and I was talking to another monk and started to complain. And at first my complaints were kind of very soft. And then as the complaining went on, my voice got louder and louder, and he said to me, "Do you notice what's going on here? You're getting more and more worked up, and getting more and more angry." In that case, that time kind of was not mindful enough of the feeling of anger and trying to stop it at this feeling, instead kind of letting this anger proliferate. In this way, feelings can be unskillful if one has a negative feeling and one allows that feeling to proliferate. They call this papancha. One allows it to expand from the feeling itself into thinking, into actions that are unskillful, then this is how feeling can lead to unskillful actions. The opposite can also be true. If one has a feeling that's good, and one has a feeling of goodwill, of compassion, of empathetic joy, one has a kind of feeling of pleasantness that comes from observing the breath in a way that makes it feel relaxed, makes the whole body feel relaxed. If one allows that feeling to proliferate, if one works to proliferate that feeling, this feeling of goodwill, this feeling of empathetic joy, then in this way feeling can lead to skillful things. But in both of these cases, the main thing that's important to keep in mind is the Buddha's emphasis on mindfulness, or sati, as the agent that determines how we react to a feeling and whether or not our reaction to that feeling leads to more skillful or more unskillful states. So Steve had asked what the role of phassa, or contact, is in feeling. And basically, phassa is what conditions feeling. From the 6 sense bases, you get contact with the world. And the 6 sense bases are the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. And from these one gets contact. This word phassa in Pali means touching. So these are the ways in which a person touches the world. It touches the world through the eye, one touches the world through the ear, one touches the world through the nose, through the tongue, through the body, and the mind. And when one touches the world, this is what produces feeling. Feeling is conditioned by the ability to perceive or touch the world through contact. And contact's this external thing with the internal media that allows one to feel it. So whenever this kind of contact comes up, the Buddha uses this metaphor, the gatekeeper. In other words, a gatekeeper is somebody who stands at the gate. This is what he compares mindfulness to, a gatekeeper. A gatekeeper is somebody who stands at the gate to determine whether or not that person should be let in or shouldn't be let in. A gatekeeper might do other things as well. They might let them in with certain conditions. They might let them in if they pay an entry fee, kind of these various things, these powers that a gatekeeper has. But a gatekeeper has to be very careful to watch what the person who approaches looks like and to bring up memories of the types of people he's supposed to let in and the types of people he or she is supposed to keep out. And in the same way, this faculty of mindfulness is something that one uses to observe the contacts that one comes into in the world, but it's also something that one uses to keep in mind the teachings of the Buddha, the Dhamma teachings of the Buddha, so that one knows whether it's skillful to let in a feeling or to stop it. One knows whether it's skillful to let in a feeling in its friends or stop that feeling in its friends. And it's this faculty of mindfulness that governs this contact that one has with the world and can change one's reactions to feelings from skillful or unskillful to skillful. This is what allows one, if one sees somebody who's one's angry with, it's what allows one to stop the anger and replace it with a thought of metta. In this way, even this contact with an unpleasant object, an unpleasant feeling, can be turned to skillful means. In the same way, if one sees something wholesome that one likes, that's good, one sees a kind of act of charity, or one sees somebody meditating, if one has this empathetic joy that comes up, then this faculty of mindfulness will notice that and try to promote it, try to allow it to grow. So in this way, this faculty of mindfulness and this contact at the six sense bases, if one is very careful about what one perceives and how one lets it in, then this is what allows wholesome or unwholesome qualities to grow. So one of the last questions that Steve had asked was, why is it important for a person who's serious about training their mind to guard their sense doors? And this kind of relates to some of the things that we were just discussing a little bit, which is basically as one goes through the world, one has these senses that are like open doors, and there's things impinging on them all the time. If whatever it is that comes into one's senses is unguarded, then that thing can grow, it can set up shop, it can proliferate. And if one isn't careful about what comes in and what doesn't come in, then bad things can come in and proliferate. So actually the Buddha's teachings on moving towards kind of higher states of meditation, one of the things that always tends to precede is this restraint of the senses. In other words, if a person desires to get good results from their meditation, but they go through most of their day unrestrained in their thinking, unrestrained in their behavior, just kind of grabbing on to whatever sense impressions there are, then when one sits down to meditate, it's those sense impressions that come back into one's mind. It's those habits that come back into one's mind. And so when one tries to focus in on the breath, what one's up against is a habit of just letting the mind wander wherever it likes. And this habit will prevent one from gaining the results that one hopes for in one's meditation. And kind of the happiness that comes from meditation is a happiness that's based on having this internal composure. And this internal composure comes from being able to focus on a single object, being able to focus on the breath without letting the mind slip off, being able to focus on whatever topic, metta, without letting the mind slip off. And this ability is something that comes from restraint of the senses. When one's very careful about what one takes in through the six sense doors, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind, what ideas one allows to come up, one is training one's mind throughout the day. One is training one's mind throughout the day to grow in wholesome qualities and cause unwholesome qualities to diminish. So this kind of constant training is something that one can never really let up. One can never really stop. If one has this kind of attitude of constantly training the mind to restrain the six senses, then when one sits down to meditate, that momentum carries forward into one's meditation. And the way the great masters describe it is that one only stops when it's time to sleep. The minute one wakes up, again, one is directing one's mind. One is training one's mind with whatever contacts come to it. One focuses on one's meditation object as soon as one gets up. And one doesn't let go of this desire, of this quest to have wholesome qualities grow until one sleeps. Then one can't control one's mind. So in this way, we talked a little bit about feedback loops before. If somebody sees a kind of person that makes them angry, it causes anger to grow if they just allow the motion in and don't stop it. But that's a negative feedback loop. This restraint of the senses is something that leads to a positive feedback loop. One restrains the senses. One learns to let in only things that are wholesome. And when one sits down to meditate, this restraint carries forward as a momentum. In other words, it leads to more positive results. And if one is able to calm one's mind in meditation, this increases one's ability to restrain one's senses off the cushion. So these lead to positive feedback loops. And these positive feedback loops are what allow the Buddha's teachings to grow at first slowly in the mind, but then exponentially. This thing can grow much quicker. So it's not always just like a straight, small, linear line. When one develops certain skills, and those skills can be used to develop other skills. So in this way, this restraint of the senses is something that the Buddha always recommends, always places emphasis on, and never recommends that one allow to slip away. So those are just some of the answers to Steve's question on this aggregate of Vedana, and how to practice with Vedana, the Buddha's teachings on how to practice with Vedana, so that unwholesome states diminish, so that wholesome states increase, and so that one can set one's feet firmly on the path to the ending of suffering. Okay, so I think leave that for reflection, and hope that everybody has a great day wherever it might be, and wishing you all the blessings of Dhamma practice. Pati Pati Saranai.